Have you ever felt the approach of a storm, even when the sky seemed calm, as if the wind changed direction, as if something inside you whispered, "Prepare yourself, something is coming," not outside, but within, a restlessness with no name, a tension with no explanation. Sometimes the world seems at peace, but your soul already hears the distant thunder, and then you realize not every war begins with shouts. Some begin with silences, with omens, with the feeling that it's time to furl the sails and watch the horizon with calm eyes and a steady mind. We live in an age that glorifies haste, noise, and immediate responses, but there is an ancient wisdom, forgotten by many, the virtue of silence before the storm. The Stoics called this inner preparation. The prophets called it spiritual obedience. Noah was not a warrior. He was not an orator. He did not lead crowds, nor did he try to convince the world. He simply listened to the voice no one else heard, and with steady hands and a steadfast heart, he began to build, without knowing when, without knowing why, only with faith and discipline. Today, in this video, you won't just hear another biblical story. You'll discover how self-mastery, emotional silence, and deep listening can become your ark amid your own storms. Stay until the end, because this reflection may transform how you face chaos, and if you feel you need more meaningful silence, more direction amid the world's noise, subscribe to this channel. Here, every story is a silent compass for the soul. Today, we'll uncover the Stoic message behind "Silence your soul before the storm." The flood of Noah. The world was in turmoil, a noise not heard with the ears, but one that vibrated in the gestures of men, in blind choices, in hasty decisions, and in hardened hearts. The earth was not just worn by human hands, it was corrupted by the souls of those who had forgotten what was essential. It was a time when excess was mistaken for blessing, and power for wisdom. Haste reigned, arrogance spread, greed spoke louder than any prayer. Humanity drifted from the natural order, and the world's harmony gave way to chaos veiled by the illusion of progress. It was in this time that God looked not to the crowns of kings nor the altars of the wise, but to the heart of one man, a man ordinary in the world's eyes, but extraordinary in the eyes of the Eternal. His name was Noah. He was not a hero in the classic sense. He commanded no armies. He wrote no laws. He sat among no rulers. But he possessed what is rare even today, an attentive spirit, a heart that listened to silence, a soul that still recognized the difference between the world's noise and the whisper of the sacred. There was no spectacle, no sky splitting open, no thunder announcing his mission, only a feeling, a presence, a voice that came not from without, but from within, a firm, unshakable conviction that said, "Build an ark, not for a visible present, but for an unthinkable future, not to please, but to obey." And that is what Noah did. While the world clamored for pleasure and power, he began to work. With his own hands, he started a project no one understood. He cut wood, gathered tools, planned measurements. No dates, no proof, no audience. The sky remained blue, the ground dry. The people laughed, but he continued, because he had heard something no one else cared to hear. And that was enough. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months, months to years. Nothing happened. No rain, no sign, only the echo of mockery, the laughter of those who called him a fool. Many labeled him a fanatic, someone who had gone mad following a voice no one else heard. Neighbors, family, friends all drifted away. But Noah did not seek to justify himself. He did not try to convince anyone. He did not argue. He simply continued. With each strike of the hammer, he drove not just wood, but faith. With each silent day, his soul learned to resist judgment without being tainted by anger. The building of the ark was more than labor. It was a spiritual exercise, a training of the soul, what Seneca would call the practice of virtue under trial. It was hard. What hurt most was not the mockery of others, but the silence of the heavens, the absence of answers, the lack of confirmation, the endless waiting. It's easy to believe when there are signs, harder to keep going when nothing changes. But he remained, as Epictetus would say, "Don't seek for things to happen as you wish, but wish for them to happen as they do, and you will be happy." Noah did not fight the delay. He did not question the absence of signs. He accepted, and he continued, because his faithfulness did not depend on guarantees. It was discipline. It was silent courage. Then when nothing was expected, when the sky, until then, silent, finally stirred, came the rupture. The weather darkened, the clouds gathered like an army. The wind shifted, and the first drop fell, then another, and another. Within hours the world became sea. The rain did not come as a gentle blessing. It came as judgment. It came as an end. What was once certainty turned to despair. Streets became rivers, houses, fragile islands. The humanity that once mocked the ark now ran, but it was too late. Inside the ark, however, there was silence, not the silence of fear, but the silence of peace. Noah did not shout. He did not exalt himself. He did not question. He simply remained, seated, watchful, like a serene captain at the helm of his vessel, trusting not in his own strength, but in the strength of his obedience. The storm outside was immense, but within him there was stability. The world crumbled, but his soul did not waver. It was as if he had already weathered that flood days before within himself, because deep down, the hardest storm to endure was not the one that fell from the sky, but the one he endured in silence. All those years when he seemed wrong, Noah's true victory was not surviving the rain but resisting abandonment, mockery, and doubt. He conquered despair, and so, when the storm arrived, he was already ready. This is the Stoic essence hidden within the ark. It's not about miracles, but steadfastness. Spiritual discipline, acting with conviction, even without applause, staying centered while the world spins in chaos. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, what happens to you happens for you. Receive it with courage, not with complaint. Noah received the task, endured the silence, worked diligently, was ridiculed, and in the end, he survived, not just physically, but morally. He remained whole, serene, unshaken. He is the portrait of a man who lived not to please the world, but to be at peace with his conscience, to live by a higher order, to fulfill his role in the great cycle of existence even if it meant walking alone. This is the true victory. To stand firm when no one else sees the point, to remain silent when everything around you screams, to have faith, not as passive hope, but as disciplined action, and above all, to learn to listen to what can only be heard when all else falls silent. At its core, the story of Noah is a portrait of the Stoic soul amid chaos. It is not merely a tale of divine obedience or physical survival. It is a profound narrative about self-mastery, silent faith, and emotional resilience in the face of absurdity. While those around him followed the impulses of the moment, immediate pleasure, collective arrogance, denial of the unseen, Noah chose a path that can only be walked by those who have learned to listen more than they speak, to act more than they complain, and to stand firm when everything around them seems to crumble. As Epictetus, one of the pillars of Stoicism, would say, it's not what happens that disturbs us, but how we interpret it. Noah could have easily interpreted God's silence as abandonment. He could have seen the long years without signs as punishment, as a lack of meaning. He could have grown bitter, rebelled, given in to doubt. After all, it is deeply human to want results, answers, confirmations. But Noah chose another path. He did not interpret the delay as rejection, but as preparation. He did not see the mockery of others as a personal offense, but as external noise unworthy of his reaction. He understood something few grasp. The silence from above does not mean the absence of purpose. Sometimes it is precisely in silence that the spirit is forged. Seneca, in one of his letters, wrote, "Difficulty strengthens the mind, just as labor does the body." This phrase perfectly echoes Noah's journey. Every hammer strike on the ark was not just wood being shaped, was a man being strengthened. Every measurement, every cut, every patiently fitted joint was invisible training for the soul. And every day without rain, every morning identical to the last, every night without change was an invitation to emotional maturity, a continuous test of resilience, where faith had to remain alive even without signs, even without rewards. This is the true virtue of endurance, not the pride that shouts and demands, but the maturity that observes, accepts, adapts, and continues. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, once wrote, "Accept without pride, let go without attachment." This is exactly what Noah demonstrated. He did not cling to recognition because he never had it. He did not feed on applause because none came. And yet, he continued. His motivation was not in the gaze of others, but in the alignment with his conscience. He was a man who understood his duty and fulfilled it not because he expected something in return, but because he knew that inner peace is born when one lives in harmony with what they believe. This attitude of silent fidelity, disciplined action, and emotional restraint is deeply Stoic. Without knowing it, Noah was a Stoic amid the end of the world. He showed that true strength lies not in controlling external events, but in governing one's own mind in the face of the inevitable. The world collapsed outside, but within him, there was calm. He did not try to change the storm. He simply prepared to be ready when it arrived. And this, for the ancient Stoics, is the definition of true wisdom: to accept with dignity what cannot be avoided, and to prepare with courage for whatever comes. As Ecclesiastes also teaches in its contemplative, almost Stoic tone, there is a time for everything under heaven, a time to build and a time to tear down, a time to be silent and a time to speak. Noah understood the time for silence, and so, when the time of the storm came, he was not destroyed by it. He was lifted. This is the subtle beauty of the story. It reminds us that surviving the storm is not enough. One must pass through it with dignity, and more than that, one must be ready long before it begins to fall. Because true preparation does not happen in moments of crisis. It is built behind the scenes, in silence, in the unseen. Noah did not prepare during the storm. He was already ready before it. And this is one of the greatest Stoic legacies. The storm does not change who you are. It reveals in you why you living through your own invisible flood. Perhaps there is no water rising against the walls, no lightning splitting the sky. Maybe, from the outside, everything seems normal, but inside, something pulses, a constant unease, a deafening silence, a nameless void that you feel. You wake every day with the sense that something is about to change and, yet, with the doubt of whether that something will ever truly come. Maybe you are in a season of waiting, without answers, without confirmation, without signs. You are building something: a new career, a more authentic relationship, a life purpose, but the world does not understand. In fact, perhaps they even mock you. Friends who once stood by you now doubt your path. Family who should support you only question. Those close to you chuckle at your choice to live with meaning, as if purpose were foolishness. Have you ever felt this way? Alone, ignored, empty, amid many, with the sense that your struggle is too invisible to be recognized, and yet too deep to abandon? What if I told you that this silence that troubles you is exactly what is preparing you? What if this delay, this absence of signs, this feeling of being in the dark is not a punishment, but a calling, a call to grow stronger, without applause, to work on yourself while no one is watching, to cut, assemble, hammer your own inner arc? Who hurt you? On have you yet to forgive? What grudges do you carry, even knowing they weigh more on you than on those who caused them? How many times have you rehearsed responses to justify yourself, to explain, to convince others you are right? And how many of those times did you realize it wasn't necessary? You may be, right now, hammering your own arc in the dark, making silent choices, living with discipline, building something great, while the world sees you as small. But remember, Noah's Ark was massive, and yet it was built in silence. No audience, no witnesses, just him, God, and his faith. There are storms that come not because you did something wrong, but because you were chosen to endure, to prove not to the world, but to yourself that true strength is invisible, that self-control is more valuable than validation, that consistency in silence is worth more than haste in noise. Perhaps you are trying to explain too much, justifying too much, wanting others to understand your journey, when in truth, they don't even have the tools to grasp what you are living. Is this effort to be accepted pulling you away from what truly matters? Noah did not answer with words. He did not try to convince anyone. He simply built, day after day, in silence. And when the rain finally fell, he didn't need to say, "I told you so." The ark spoke for itself. Time justified his faith. Silent endurance was, in the end, his greatest answer. And perhaps this is your path as well. So ask yourself, are you waiting for recognition, or are you ready to act without it? Are you clinging to past wounds, or preparing for a future greater than anyone around you can imagine? Build, even when no one understands. Build, even when it all seems futile. Build, in silence, and let time justify your faith. Noah didn't need to defeat anyone. He simply needed to wait, And trust. The wise man doesn't choose the easiest path. He honors the one given to him. If you're in silence, but still building, if you're being tested, but refuse to stop, you're exactly where you need to be. If this story stirred something deep within you, consider following this channel. Here, every story is a silent compass for the soul, because in the end, it's not the roar of the storm that defines you, it's the silence you choose to cultivate, before it arrives.